Everyone's going somewhere.
It seems like everybody's in such a hurry nowadays.
Until they're not. Sass Fisher feels the vulnerability of being stuck on the roadside all day, every day.
If a semi goes by, or even a pickup doing 65, you can actually feel the wind and will actually push you. And that's just the wind force. Imagine if that vehicle actually touched you.
And that's why the move over law went into effect. First, protecting emergency responders, later expanding to cover roadside assistance vehicles like Fisher's rig. Then ODOT introduced a bill that increased the scope even more.
There actually have been more fatalities involving general motorists who are on the side of the road as opposed to law enforcement officers. So we measured from 2011 to 2015, and in that time, 8 motorists died, whereas only 5 law enforcement people died.
Now, the law covers all motorists.
It's now required that everybody pull over for any kind of incident that's happening on the side of the road where it looks like there's some kind of an emergency going on.
Here's how it works. If you see an emergency vehicle or any car on the side of the road showing signs of distress, this can be anything from emergency flashers to a popped hood, you are required to move over a lane if it's safe.
Semi going right by.
And if not, slow down by at least 5 miles per hour below the posted speed limit.
I think it's a great thing. I think that a law is only as good as the people that actually follow it and the people that actually know about it.
So, do they?
We saw this vehicle over here broken down on the side of the road with its hazards on, and we decided to start counting. And it looks like he is not going to move over. This car could definitely move over if they want to. They have a chance. They did not move over. This car is not moving over. We counted 100 vehicles. Out of those 100 vehicles, only 13 of them moved over when they could have, meaning 87 did not move over.
The driver, Trevor Wright, did everything he was supposed to when his tire blew.
I popped it, I pulled over, I immediately turned on my hazards so that everybody would make sure it's clear as day that I have an issue and that I need my space.
Wright says he felt his truck being pushed into him. I told him how many drivers failed our test.
Yeah, that's kind of scary. Really is kind of scary.
Scary, but not surprising.
Nobody moves. Nobody ever gets over.
But the Oregon State Police are cracking down. During the first quarter of 2017, 219 drivers were cited for violating the move over law. For 2018, this number more than doubled to 459. A ticket will run you $265 to $525, and probably won't be worth the time saved.
What's it going to take, 20 seconds to get by? What is that in the big scheme of things? It's nothing. You know, it's a half a sip of coffee, and that's it. Literally, it could save someone's life.
Driving around Bend and Redmond can feel like you're driving in circles sometimes. With all the roundabouts, you'd think we'd be experts, but many drivers fail to master some simple rules.
I don't signal in, but out, yeah.
I don't signal, not because I'm not trying to disobey the law, but just because it's too confusing.
No signal.
Diana DeLand,
Get the license plate on that one.
a driver's education instructor, says according to Oregon law, you must signal out of a roundabout when you exit. DeLand pointed out drivers making mistakes at this roundabout in Redmond.
Oh, way too fast entering the roundabout and no signal. 2 no signals.
DeLand shows us the proper way to do it.
You can start scanning your left zone, and if there's no traffic, you can, in one fluid motion, just enter the roundabout. And you're watching for other traffic as you're going around. You're watching for pedestrians, bicyclists. And when you get to the exit that you want to leave on, you turn on your turn signal. I think he did very well. I'll put that in my notes.
Right now, there are 32 roundabouts in the city of Bend, with 5 more in the works.
And one of the main goals of a roundabout is not only to increase traffic flow, but also to make sure that people are staying safe. And that includes pedestrians. And while you're not supposed to stop while driving through a roundabout, you are supposed to stop for a pedestrian if they're crossing the street.
As the population grows, roundabouts aim to keep traffic flowing.
Some of the studies we've done on capacity of roundabouts in Bend versus nationwide, we actually have about 30% better capacity from the same style of roundabout, and I think that's because our drivers are so used to them.
Because drivers are forced to slow down, studies show a 76% drop in the number of people hurt if an accident does occur in a roundabout. And after this roundabout replaced a traffic signal at 15th and Reed Market,
We had projected that the crashes would decrease by about half. They've actually decreased more than that, 85% decrease in crashes at this intersection.
so now you know the how and why roundabouts have become a fixture on the Central Oregon landscape.
There have been times where I have been in a hurry and not made it through and it's red.
Missed it by that much. Since the first electric traffic light was invented in 1912, people have been racing to get through them, even after they turn red. If you drive at all in Central Oregon, you know which lights are toughest to get through.
US 20 and Empire is a quite congested intersection.
David Hirsch has a lot on his plate. He works for the Oregon Department of Transportation as the traffic manager for Region 4, which stretches from Hood River to Klamath Falls. He told me the rate of people running reds goes up when there's more congestion.
When traffic volumes increase, there's often times that you may have not everybody make it through the signal. And if that happens, we call that a split failure.
As the Central Oregon population continues to explode, this problem will only get worse.
Historically, looking at Bend, traffic volumes have been increasing quite dramatically over the last 5 years specifically, to the point where people may not have waited previously, and now they are having to wait at the intersection.
Perhaps nowhere is this more apparent than at the intersection of Highway 20 and Empire. When I was filming at the corner, I noticed most of the drivers running reds were going eastbound on Empire. Now, there's only one lane coming into the intersection from that side, and it does tend to get piled up. I tried a little experiment. Between 5:15 and 5:30 p.m. on a Thursday, I sat through 10 light sequences. On average, there were 17 cars waiting to cross the intersection by the time the light turned green, not counting those in the left turn lane. An average of 11 cars made it through each time, meaning there are 6 that have to just wait for the next cycle. But get this, in 4 out of those 10 trials, the last person across the intersection ran the red light. I decided to try out another intersection, this time Greenwood and Bond. This one's unique because just after you pass Bond, going west on Greenwood, you come right up to the Wall Street signal. The short distance can create a buildup between the two intersections, sometimes to the point at which you have to stop on a green light. But sometimes you've just got to make it through, and that's exactly what I saw when I arrived. The first 5 light cycles I saw had heavy congestion between Bond and Wall, and each of those 5 times, someone snuck through a red light. The next cycle cleared that space, but on that one, someone still ran a red light. This intersection is a unique challenge, not just because of the spacing between the signals, but also because it's downtown. The traffic lights in that part of town are rigidly timed. They're always on a set pattern. The rest of Bend relies on more sophisticated technology.
Cameras mounted at each intersection will send information directly to these receptors here, which then relay the information for processing with this box. The information finally goes down to those fuses you see down there, and then it'll go directly to those lights.
So when you hear about tripping the signal to make it turn green faster, it kind of does work like that, but with pixel movements. All the lights outside of downtown work in conjunction with each other to give all drivers of the intersection a chance to get through without having to wait another cycle. Again, there's only one person in charge of all this, so necessary changes to the system might take a while to implement.
As much as we like to say we like to do things proactively, the truth of the matter is we've only got so much staff that can evaluate these signals. And so we tend to be a little bit more on the reactive side.
It might also be our best defense against light running, even considering the hefty fine if you're caught.
Trying to enforce that is probably not realistic, just because of the time that it would take for a police officer to do other important things as opposed to enforcing a stoplight would be ineffective.
So as technology improves, our light running habits could be reduced and we might just sneak across in time.
Our
radar gun picked up quite a few speeders on the Parkway, off of Empire Avenue, and in residential neighborhoods.
45.
He was literally right here, and it was perfect because he was blocked by the rocks right here.
Grant Caudell vividly remembers when he got pulled over for going 42 miles per hour in a 25 speed limit zone.
As I came through this intersection, I got right about where these red trees are, and that was when I saw him lift his kickstand. And I thought, uh-oh.
He was running late to class, but admits he probably shouldn't have been going that fast. He said the traffic cop was just doing his job.
I think he saw my parking sticker on the way up because his first question was, were you a little late to class this morning?
According to Bend Police Sergeant Eric Hagan, speed limits matter.
Our ultimate goal is to reduce crash numbers.
No matter the location, whether it's the Parkway, a residential neighborhood, or side street, Hagan said a common theme exists.
I think people are just in a hurry.
Hitting the brakes when you see a police car won't actually do you any good. Hagan said an officer has your speed marked long before you reach them.
You know, when we're utilizing our lasers, we're taking readings upwards of 1,200 and 1,300 feet. So by the time they see us, we already have our speed reading.
And it seems no matter the risk, people are willing to push the limits.
I was actually going ridiculously fast, and I knew that I was doing something stupid.
Leah McKinney lives in La Pine and commutes to work in Bend every day. In this case, she was on her way to her first day at a new job. But an officer caught her speeding through a 55 zone on Highway 97.
97 gets really frustrating between La Pine and Sun River because there's only 2 passing lanes and there are so many semi-trucks. And so, yeah, I floored it.
When she saw the officer, she had a gut feeling that something might happen.
It was kind of like the doomsday thing where I was like, this is gonna happen soon. I actually ended up pulling over without him turning his lights on because I felt so guilty.
Ultimately, McKinney said she understands why it happened. Safety.
It got to the point where I was like, you know, this is my fault. I was driving way too fast. It was really unsafe for other people.
According to Hagan, this is usually the case.
Most of the people we deal with, they're nice people, they're good people, they live in our community, and they also want the community to be safe, and they realize that they just made an error.
The state sets speed limits, but communicating why those limits exist is important. For example, a 45 mile per hour speed limit on the Parkway.
The lanes are not as wide as a standard state highway. We don't have the standard median as a highway, and as most people know, the on and off ramps just don't work well with people merging on and off at a highway speed.
But speeding on the Parkway is not the complaint officers receive the most.
I get a lot of complaints on a daily basis of speeding in neighborhoods.
Because of the presence of kids.
Kids walking, kids riding bikes. Those are the things that I worry about.
Last year, 2,800 crashes happened in Bend alone. And while a ticket may ruin your day,
just to try to keep in mind that these guys are doing the best they can with the information they have right now versus they're not out there to make your day bad.
My son is dead because of what you're doing.
A strong message from a grieving mother. Melissa Hohweiler's son Forrest was killed 7 years ago. He was just 16 years old.
My dad showed up at my house with a police officer and a priest and told me that my son had been killed by a texting driver. And I just dropped to my knees.
The accident happened in Bend, on the corner of Reed Market and Pettigrew Roads. The driver had been texting 2 women, one of whom was sitting right next to him in the passenger seat.
And the trailer spun and hit my son Forrest riding his bike and projected him into a lava rock wall, killing him instantly.
In 2015, more than 3,000 people died in the U.S. because of distraction-related accidents on the road. In Oregon, a distracted driver causes a crash every 2.5 hours. That works out to about 10 crashes every single day.
Is that text that important? No, it's not that important. A life is worth way more than a text.
And it's not just texting while driving.
The term distracted driving means anything that takes your attention off the road. But when it comes to getting a citation, the laws are a bit more specific. Say your dog's in the front seat with you. Or maybe you have to check on your child who's sitting in the back seat. You could even be drinking coffee on your way into work. And while technically none of this is illegal, it could earn you a citation for careless driving. But the second you pick up your phone, that's a ticket for distracted driving.
If you think you're good at multitasking, you're wrong.
In fact, research shows that we're not really capable of doing it, even though we like to think that we are.
We sat in on a driver's ed class at Ridgeview High School. To really prove multitasking while driving is a bad idea,
it was crazy. It was bad.
students had to complete 3 rounds of a timed exercise. In round 1,
the students are identifying random numbers sprinkled on a piece of paper.
Then in round 2, they add in
3, 8, 9. Oh no.
Send it.
And in round 3,
while they're doing the first 2 things, they receive a text message from their partner that they're working with, and they have to reply to the text message.
A lot of kids in there were distracted for almost 2 minutes.
So even a few seconds lapse of that potentially could be quite dangerous.
Oregon ranks 9th in the country when it comes to people using a phone while driving.
People feel tremendous pressure of missing out or of feeling like they're going to be late with something.
If we know distracted driving is bad and potentially deadly, why do we still do it?
Unfortunately, it's because a lot of the time we'll get away with it. They don't get that response that this is a problem. There's no consequence, there's no punishment.
But for people like Melissa,
and I just keep seeing his face.
the consequences are something she and her family have to face every day.
School.
Hi.
Speed 20.
All right, go ahead, guys.
7 a.m. to 5 p.m. You see the sign.
Good morning. Have a good day.
But do you obey?
There's a lot of people that just fly by and kind of like, if I don't see them, they're going to go as fast as they want anyways.
Megan Williamson has been a crossing guard at Ponderosa Elementary since last fall.
I feel like sometimes they're maybe distracted and then they'll like see me or they'll be like, oh, I'm in a school zone, and then they'll slow down, really fast, like they forget.
But forgetting can be deadly. At 20 miles per hour, 5% of people hit by a car would be killed. At 30 miles per hour, that jumps to 45%. And at 40 miles per hour, 95% of people hit by a car would be killed. And that makes the school zones at 20 miles per hour an important number to remember.
25, right? Or, I don't know, actually. There should be a sign right there at the end of every school zone, so I don't really drive yet, so. It's 20? Oh, yeah, people are not going 20.
We wanted to see the school zone speeders for ourselves. And it wasn't hard.
That car is going 37 miles per hour in a 20 mile per hour school zone that lasts from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., all while kids play right here.
It's dangerous, these kids, they're not always paying attention. And, I have seen a couple kids run out after a ball or something like that. And, these drivers could definitely cause some damage because they're not going the limit that they should be going. They don't have time to stop.
So what happens if you're caught speeding through a school zone? In Bend, unless the sign states that fines will be enhanced, police officers can only write tickets for normal fines. That means a $110 ticket for going 10 miles over on the parkway remains $110 if you're going 10 miles over in front of a school.
It's overlooked, but the signs are pretty clear, and that's the bottom line. And so I have no problem with the police, giving extra enforcement and tickets for people speeding in these zones.
Because the simple act of slowing down,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
will have some people extremely grateful for it.